joining the webinar. Today we're going to talk about virtualization, a subject that's getting more and more popular every day, not that it's particularly new. If you look at how we approach software in general, we do a couple of releases every year, and we've worked on the operating system support and the virtualization support in almost every release because it's a changing area. So we've had the VMware piece for quite a while, and with this presentation we're going to talk about our introduction of the Hyper-V piece as well. If you kind of look at some of the features that we have listed here, this is just showing the last couple of years of software updates and what we've worked on and added. You'll see a lot of new functionality. That's always important, solving a lot of new problems. But there's also quite a bit of work that goes into the infrastructure piece. As you all know, if you run the enterprise, that's a constantly changing piece. Every platform you have that has software on it has updates and changes in software, and it's probably a full-time job for a number of people in your organization to stay on top of that. And virtualization does make that a little easier. Virtualization kind of gives you more control over that world. You still have the application piece on top of it, but it gives you a more standardized infrastructure. And what that does, of course, is makes it easier to maintain. In a lot of cases, makes it more robust. And certainly, going forward, it keeps the costs in control because of the similarity of everything that's going on. If we look at virtualization and kind of how it started, it's been around for quite a few years, but it really started to take I think a jump into the enterprise as VMware came out with some of their more enterprise-focused versions a couple of years ago. And then as that drove the popularity up, other products that do virtualization became popular, and you started seeing more and more of it. And of course, a while ago, Microsoft got in the game, and just in the last year or so, their Hyper-V product has started to be very popular. And there's a survey here that talks about what people are planning to deploy and what they've already deployed. And while I'm not really sure how accurate those numbers are, the fact is we know it's growing, and we know while most enterprises in the last few years have wanted to talk to us about VMware, quite a few more in the last year have also wanted to talk to us about Hyper-V. So Hyper-V is the piece that's new for us in terms of support on the 8.7 release that just came out. We've been working with this in our labs for a while and worked through a couple of issues just to make sure that we understood how it worked. It's a different kind of architecture than what VMware was, so we needed to make a few changes in the product, nothing significant. We now support Hyper-V, and for those of you that have our systems or are familiar with our systems, we do a pretty good job at supporting all the different possible configurations. We have a number of components in our system, and basically they can all be virtualized with the exception of Neverfail, which is our system server redundancy software we use, cannot be supported on Hyper-V. Now, that's not really that much of a problem because if you're using Hyper-V, you're probably going to use their high availability piece for the redundancy, and they do support that with a combination of clustering and load balancing. So you still can get a high availability, a high availability configuration of the CXE product running on Hyper-V. And we do support both hardware licensing using the Anywhere USB appliance to map to a dongle, or the more popular software-based licensing, which is cloud-based. So now we can say, for those of you looking at our product, whether you currently have our product and want to move to Hyper-V, or you're looking at putting our product in on Hyper-V, we're in good shape to support that full functionality. As I've said, we've had the VMware vSphere product for a lot longer. We've done all the work for testing on that over a number of software releases, and we not only support the components on there, but we also support the features like vMotion. You can actually move one of our call servers from one host to another while it's operational without losing calls. We support their high availability and fault tolerance. So even without our Neverfail software that gives you redundancy, you could get a high level of redundancy by using a shadow instance through fault tolerance. And we do support dynamic resource allocation on VMware, which lets you manage those servers a little more efficiently depending on what the load is at any time. If you look at the different ways that we can deploy this on VMware, we could certainly have software redundancy by having it on separate servers. And this is kind of showing you the basic system where we have 2 of our system servers using the Neverfail for synchronization, and then we have multiple call servers, and they're all running on their own physical platform. And this has been one of the ways it's been being deployed for years, and we still see some people deploying this. But now we also see a lot of people going virtual. I would say we're in the 40% range, somewhere in that area probably, for the number of customers that actually run this in a virtual environment today. And there's a lot of different ways it can be deployed. Looking at the VMware package itself, I guess it doesn't like my slides today. I've just got a failure going on here.
Uh-oh. Do you want me to pull up the?
No, it'll come back up.
Okay.
It'll come back up on its own. Sorry about this. See, if I was running Virtualized, that probably wouldn't have happened. I don't know if that's true, but here we go. All right, we're back. So when we talk about the virtualization piece, for most of the new integrations, we're going to support an IP, a SIP integration most likely, to the telephone system, which means we have no physical requirements on servers for cards or any of those pieces, which means everything we do, the core servers, the system server and call server, plus all of our adjunct services like web phone manager and digital networking, fax over IP, all of that can be virtualized as well. When we look at licensing our system, we have a software protection scheme, and we used to support a number of different ways to license this on VMware, and that included their direct I/O. But as we move forward, we found supporting a physical dongle in a host really had some problems. The reliability wasn't high enough for us to feel comfortable with it. A few years ago, we added support for Anywhere USB, and Anywhere USB is actually a network appliance where you mount the dongle, and mapping to that we have found to be 100% effective. So if you want to have a hardware licensed system, we still support. Anywhere USB is supported both in VMware and on Hyper-V. And there are some times when the systems in your data center, you don't want to give them access to the outside network. And in those cases, you would use the Anywhere USB method of licensing. For most customers where the access out to the public network is available, we use software-based licensing. So instead of having to be able to see that dongle, and when the system starts its services, it actually does a look out, and it looks out into the network to a cloud licensing system out there, and that certifies that system and starts it up. And then what happens is on a regular basis, the system constantly checks in to make sure it can see that license, and at any point in time when it can't see that license, it goes ahead and raises an error, and there's still a period, a grace period, where the system continues to run. There's a number of different ways. I mean, we actually have some people that simply want everything on VMware, so they'll put the multiple elements all on one physical server, all on one host. That's not generally what we see. What we'll generally see is each component is going to be installed with on a separate host. Now, we certainly support having CXE on a host with other applications, but we do want to look carefully at some of the resource usage, because it isn't just the CPU and the memory, but it's actually the data bus. When we start putting lots of digitized conversations on a system, we can use up a pretty big piece of that data bus. So we have some utilities and some checking we do to make sure that that system can be healthy when it's running at its full capacity. We also sometimes see using the Neverfail product while it's actually virtualized. So instead of having 2 physical servers that are synced, we put those system servers in and we sync them with Neverfail. And basically, that gives you a different level of redundancy. When we talk about the 2 ways of having redundant system servers, which is with the Neverfail software keeping the 2 separate physical platforms in sync, versus having VMware with fault tolerance keeping the server separate, there are some differences in failover. The Neverfail server is kind of a little more elegant in that it's not just monitoring the server, it's monitoring the application. So we've written routines along with the people at Neverfail that actually look at what's going on the server, memory usage, application usage, CPU usage, so we can detect some differences that are a little more subtle. Whereas if you're just using the VMware, what's going to happen is it'll require the actual server itself to fail. So it's kind of a difference in how you want to fail over and what you're looking for in terms of that capability. As we talked about, though, once you have this deployed, the general functionality that's available in VMware is going to be able to be deployed. vMotion is one of the popular ones, but also having fault tolerance means that you can have two instances of the system server. One is kind of a shadow copy, but that would allow you to take that shadow copy, take it offline, do a software update, do patches on it, bring it up, and then make it the active system, and now you can move over and you can update the other system. So with VMware, the capabilities of keeping things running, plus having the ability to have duplicates that allow you to do software updates is pretty important. As we talk to customers about deploying CX and its components, there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions on what do you need to do that? How do I deploy that? And our software release notices have some very detailed information on what you need going. The simple way to look at this is when you want to know about the CPU and memory to dedicate, it's the same as our chart lists for physical servers. And how much of that you need is going to be completely dependent on how large the system is and what applications you're running on any particular host. So using our documentation, you'll be able to go in and find out, for a system of this size running this application, here's what the resources are, and then you simply go in and allocate those resources accordingly. It's pretty straightforward once you put it in. There's some things we look at in terms of monitoring, and there's a whole section in both the install guide and there's a smaller section in the software release notice that talks about what you need to do to monitor the system. We use the standard tools that are available in VMware, and we do the same thing for Hyper-V, where you can run and monitor the system and make sure that it's healthy. It's kind of a little different than some of the other applications that are running virtualized because of the real-time nature. In other words, if I put a little too much on a host and somebody goes and runs a database query and it slows that particular host down a little, the other application might give a user an hourglass for a few seconds before it actually could finish its task. And we can't play an hourglass to a caller. So instead what happens is if we get on a server that's taxed from a resource point of view, we can't answer that call. And when we can't answer that call, or we answer it and can't play audio, that appears to be broken to a caller. So a little more detail needs to be paid to how that application is running on that host to make sure that you're getting the resources you need. If you look, this is just an extract from our software release notice. So this is talking about, there's one chart that says, for a system this big running this applications, you need a Class A server or a Class C server. And then the chart that accompanies that is like this, that shows you what the resources are. And these are the same resources you'd then go ahead and assign to any particular host. Now you notice these are not very strenuous resources. There's an awful lot of, there's been growth in the processor market that's kind of gone beyond what we need in our platform. If you think about the choices with our system for redundancy and high availability, we've talked about Neverfail and VMware and Hyper-V, and they both offer that functionality, but they offer it in a little different way. And we sort of talked about the different environments. Some people simply want everything on VMware no matter what, and that's a choice we fully support, and you can use all the features of VMware to do that. Other people also want the Neverfail functionality because of the way it's a little more graceful and a little more redundant, or excuse me, powerful in monitoring the server and knowing when to fail over. So there's no reason you can't blend these both. If you think about all the options when you deploy CXE, you can start with just a standalone system with no redundancy at all. Basically, you can use the redundancy capabilities of the server. multiple drives, hot swappable power supplies, and get a high level of resiliency that way. Or you can take that same application and load it into VMware and get full high availability that way. And that's great use of your hardware. And for those of you that want a VMware environment, that works great. Or if you're not so much interested in virtualizing, you can take the Neverfail approach and have multiple physical servers, and they do the synchronization, and you get that same kind of redundancy, but a little lower level. You actually get applications and services protection besides just server protection. And then there's always a case where you mix those last two, and you install the Neverfail solution on the virtualized hardware. And that's kind of the best of both worlds, where you get the efficient utilization, you get the application and services protection, but you also get that friendly and familiar VMware or Hyper-V environment that people really want to see things in today. So what we've done is we've spent the time making sure that for the platform, we can fit into your environment. We're very big on interoperability, certainly at the virtualization piece that we've talked about, but that's also true for all the other connections that we make as well. So you'll find if you have other questions about the environment that we work in, what kind of group where we support all of that, just keep an eye on your email, and you'll see we do these webinars on a fairly regular basis, and we tend to cover all those different subjects. And now we'll take some questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Neil. We do have a couple of questions in the queue. If you have a question that you have not already submitted and you're looking for the question box, use the orange arrow in the upper right corner to expand the panel there, and you should see the question area toward the bottom. So, Neil, is there a configuration or size of system where AVST recommends Neverfail over virtualization?
Both have been tested up to our maximum configuration of 752 ports. So we do believe that Neverfail offers some advantages in the way that it monitors the services. So it gives you a slightly higher level of protection. But honestly, considering the reliability of the platform and running it on either virtual platform, I think it's really more of a choice of what you want to support and how you're supporting it than it is the system size for whether or not you use the Neverfail.
Okay, great. Next question, is there a license cost to virtualize CXE?
No. As far as we're concerned, the CXE is running on an operating system, and by putting that supported operating system in a virtual platform, it's no difference to us. So you basically simply buy it the same, whether you're putting it on VMware, Hyper-V, or a physical server.
Okay. Next question, what versions of CXE still require a hardware dongle?
Oh, I'm going to have to follow up with that. I believe 8.5 and before would still require the dongle. And as of 8.6, we introduced the ability to do the software licensing. But if since we have your question in your email, we'll get back to you with an exact answer for that.
Okay, thanks. Next question, do you or will you have OVA files available?
So we've been looking at that for the last two releases. There's some challenges with OVAs because of the way our software gets installed. Because the basic software itself is the starting point, and even if we can generate an OVA for that, because every system is integrated slightly differently and the configuration is slightly different, we've struggled with how, we don't want to generate 200 OVAs for all the different configurations. But it is something we're actively looking at, and marketing has not given us a date when they think they'll have something, but I know it's something that they do want to do.
Okay, another question, how do you migrate from hardware to virtualization?
There's really not a comfortable migration policy per se, but what you can do fairly easily is do a full backup of the hardware-based platform out to a network resource, then go to the virtual platform and load the CXE software and do a restore pointing out to that network resource, and it'll bring that entire configuration, messages, recordings, everything in, and you'll have created a complete copy of that system.
Okay, great. I'm just doing a quick scroll here, and it looks like we got through all the questions unless someone is still typing. So just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us on today's webinar. Thanks again, everyone. Neil, any closing words?
I'm kind of echoing yours. We certainly thank you people for coming.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.